LinkedIn, where it shines is the targeting, right? LinkedIn has everybody's information. People use it like it's their online resume. This is where people screw up on targeting and it's just money burnt.
Dude, think about that. Like it's literally one click and it's like potentially thousands of dollars if you don't have an expert looking at the stuff. If you guys are anything like me, LinkedIn ads are scary. They're complex, they're scary. There's so many filters or so many and ors that go into setting up a good campaign. And throughout all that, there's also a huge budget at stake as well. That is exactly what today's guest, Mr. Tom Casano, helps with. In the first ever live coaching episode of the podcast, my friend Tom not only explained to me LinkedIn ads, but he also looked over my shoulder and helped me set up my first campaign. If you are a marketer considering running LinkedIn ads or making a push to leadership to add this to your strategy, there is no better episode to watch than this to learn about it. Tom is the founder of Tamarind, which is a Brooklyn-based LinkedIn ads agency that does just one thing, LinkedIn for B2B. A little bit about his track record. He's managed over 50 million in ad spend across 3,000 plus campaigns. And I can tell you firsthand, you can tell when talking to the guy. He's truly an expert. He lives, eats, and breathes all these small nuances and filters that go into this stuff. And it was just such a joy to be a fly on the wall and learn from him. I brought Tom on today because I wanted him to answer the question that I selfishly had. Would LinkedIn ads make sense for a B2B company like ours? Here in a few months, I'm going to be sharing the results of this experiment, going into everything: the cost, the setup, the ROI, the conversions, the lessons learned, and what I would do differently when it comes to my own LinkedIn ads. So stay tuned for that. Definitely go over to tamarind.agency or follow Tom on LinkedIn because the guy is just a incredible wealth of knowledge about this stuff. He's one of my favorite people in B2B. And this was honestly one of my favorite ever podcast recordings. And I'm so excited to share it with you guys today. So welcome to entry 170 of Marketing by Design. I'm thrilled that you're here with me. Check out the show notes below. And without further ado, let's get right into the first ever live coaching episode. Tom Casano.
Yeah, I studied philosophy in college, and then I got into finance thinking I'd have a lot of leverage and can make more money and, that sort of thing. And then I was trading in the stock market for 10 years, and I'd have some great months and I'd have some terrible months, and I'd make some money, I'd lose some money. And so I wanted more stability. So I tried building a SaaS. That SaaS did not work out, but I wound up building a lead generation website. And then as I was building that, I had to learn SEO. And then as I learned SEO, I started selling SEO as a service to companies that had more leverage. And then from there, as I was doing my own marketing for my own marketing agency at the time, then I learned LinkedIn ads along the way. So the journey doesn't sound like it makes sense on paper, but for me, it makes sense. And yeah, I don't know what it is, but like marketing, there is a lot of leverage. You can definitely get in touch with a lot of people and, drive revenue for companies.
Yeah. I think it's always kind of circling the plane around like what the thing ends up being for us. Like when it came to time to go to college for me, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was always playing golf. I wanted to play pro, but I was basically just traveling to a bunch of tournaments as a kid, all around the country. And when it came time to make a decision for college, I had no idea. So there's a degree that's called PGM. And Tom, if you don't know what that means, it stands for Professional Golf Management, and it's offered at like 18 universities across the country. So I went and did that, and it was actually at the college Methodist where I got into marketing because I started doing design, a little bit of brand work. I started doing that freelance. And when I transferred to Finley, that's when I got in touch with a group that was called the Oiler 10, which is like a student-led marketing group and full of athletes. And we would get up at like very early in the morning and do marketing for like local businesses in exchange for donations to the university to like fund our trips and things like that. So like I totally resonate with the idea that like things don't seem related, but they end up like full circling and you end up finding your place. But when you talk about LinkedIn ads specifically, what was like your first experience with those? Did you run them for yourself, or did you have a client that wanted you to dabble in it for them that led you figuring out? What was your first experience with LinkedIn ads?
Yeah, I was running them for myself for my own business, and then quickly realized I had no idea what I was doing and had to start learning and figuring it out. And then eventually I was running like a $20,000 a month ad budget for LinkedIn ads, and then really learning a lot just by testing and doing. And at that time, I was trying to optimize down the cost per lead of MQLs, which are people just downloading content. And then, over time, so I was basically, I was getting like $50 leads. And this is of CEOs of small businesses, and eventually driving that down to like $10 leads, which in my mind is just ridiculous, like how cheap, those leads were. But
Hmm.
they're low intent, and they're not like people looking to at that time it was software we were selling. And so even though I was optimizing down that cost per lead, I realized like that wasn't even driving towards the real goal, right? It was just like we want sales and that sort of thing. But yeah, learned a lot by doing, and it was a very formative experience, right? And like you start to get sensitive towards like it's a lot of real money on the line, and you want to be careful and sensitive, like you're not wasting it or misspending it, but you're also doing the best you can with what you know. But like sometimes you're spending a few $1,000s here or there, and like you're also learning. It's also testing budget.
Yeah, that's born by doing, just the golden rule. I mean, that's kind of like I would call it like a barbell strategy when it comes to paid. Is you have to know what you're optimizing for, and you have to like have some conviction behind it. But it's also like a very high trust. It's a very high trust game, so it's helpful to have someone who knows what they're doing and has like the mindset that they're prepared to invest in something and not kind of be like half in, half out. I think that's where you get burnt. Um, when you view it as an expense and not like an investment, which I think a lot of um, people who are buying or in the market for marketing services approach this with, that's when you can really, not get the full effects of it. Um, I think a lot of just in my experience, a lot of the public knowledge out there is regarding paid media is around Facebook ads or Google ads. Um, if you had to say like, what's the biggest difference between LinkedIn ads specifically and maybe like other more B2C or mainstream forms of paid media that may have more general awareness around them? What are some of the difference between running ads on a B2B platform like LinkedIn versus Google or Facebook or some other mainstream ones?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, LinkedIn ads and Meta ads are probably the most related, the closest cousins, so to speak. Meta ads is definitely more B2C, right, on Facebook and Instagram. And so, a lot of people you're targeting, it might be stay at home moms, it might be students, it might be, other people along those lines. LinkedIn, where it shines is the targeting, right? LinkedIn has everybody's information. People use it like it's their online resume. If you got a new job, you're working at a new company, you're updating your profile. Usually, not everyone uses it, of course, but like it's pretty accurate. I can't remember the last time I updated my Facebook profile with my job or a company or whatever. So then within LinkedIn, not only do they have, and they already have like your email address and contact information if you're trying to generate leads from LinkedIn, which we can talk about getting that data over to your CRM. But they have the company size you're working at, the industry your company is categorized as, your seniority, your job function. I mean, they just have a lot of data. Where your interests are, if you have skills in there, all that kind of stuff, and a lot of forms of retargeting, which we can also talk about later. Whereas Google Ads really is great for intent, right? If someone is searching, especially if it's a bottom of funnel search, I'm looking to buy some CRM software. You get, someone converting on a landing page for that. You know that they're looking to buy CRM software right now. Those CPCs are obviously higher, but the other challenge is you don't know if that person searching is like I don't know, like a one man band, like a startup that has like no money and is not going to be able to afford Salesforce, right? You don't know who you're getting in there. So the intent on Google Ads is very high, but there's not really targeting to know, if you're doing an ABM approach or if you want to be targeting mid market or enterprise, you don't know exactly what you're getting unless it's in some of the keywords. With LinkedIn, the trade off is you know exactly who you're getting, right? I'm getting the I don't know, the CMO of a company of over 1,000 people in tech, and you know who you're targeting, but the intent is not there, right? And you want to build up the demand and the intent. So a lot of similarities, a lot of differences. And one other thing I'd add is that Meta Ads' AI is extremely strong. Like you can almost throw some stuff in there. I mean, I don't know. I don't run Meta Ads, but it's a lot more AI driven and it does a lot of things for you. LinkedIn is not as AI driven. You want to manually create the audiences. Um, but yeah, there are a lot of more similarities with Meta Ads and LinkedIn Ads in terms of the way you're running ads and where you are on the funnel.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it rewards, as I'm learning from you, I think it rewards like having maybe a higher ticket service, which is, more conducive to B2B in and of itself. So you're kind of self-selecting for that. And also like knowing what your offer is and knowing who your audience is. So, and I think that's up across the board. Like the better you know your customer, the better your messaging will be. That'll be true on any platform in terms of how well your ads convert. But especially like having the ability to control the filters and knowing like who you exactly you're getting in front of. And like I just for organic content, like I've been posting on LinkedIn for the last 3 years, and the unique ability of LinkedIn is allowing you to kind of control your audience and some in the sense that you can choose who you connect to and you can be very intentional about that. Like, okay, if you have a cadence where you're connecting with a certain amount of people who are potential buyers of your product or service every week, then you can almost guarantee that the people that accept are being shown your organic content if they're spending time on the platform. I didn't start getting into sales nav until like the start of this year, but one of the most useful things that I found, but I want to ask you how close, because probably some people, some marketers in the audience have like light experience, maybe like the free trial version of Sales Nav, and the amount of granularity that that gives you. But the most helpful part of that for me was just the ability to filter like who's active on LinkedIn and choose that as a method of who you're going to connect with. Because I don't know what the stat is, and you might know this, but I think a lot of people who have LinkedIn profiles haven't. I think that the filter that it lets you set for is like they've posted or been active in the last 2 weeks or so, or maybe 2 months. But I think a lot of people who have LinkedIn profiles aren't like as active as maybe the platform would let on. But can you talk a little bit about Sales Nav and how you guys use that in your process, or if there's any value in there, and if there's any like maybe specific filters or things that the audience can be on the lookout if they ever do engage with a tool like Sales Navigator?
Yeah, 100%. So Sales Navigator and the targeting in LinkedIn's ad platform, which is called Campaign Manager, it uses a lot of the same parameters, a lot of the same filters, but it's not 100% the same. In Sales Nav, you can put in a keyword search and then find people along with the filters. The advertising side does not have that. Um, in the ad side, you can upload a custom list of companies or people, and I don't think Sales Nav has that either. On the ad side, it you know you do want to target people that are online, right? Just like you said, not everyone is on LinkedIn all the time. Some people aren't daily, some people aren't once a month or never. But on the advertising side, it doesn't really matter if you're targeting an audience of 10,000 people and like 3,000 of them are going to be on a regular basis. It's okay. The other 7,000 people just won't see the ads. So the mindset is even a little bit different, right? Because sales nav can be if you're doing some kind of outreach, if you're sending connection requests, if you're DMing them or sending them in mails. With the advertising side, it's just a different approach, right? We're trying to build awareness, build up retargeting, and then eventually convert them. And so, whether someone is active or not, like we could that will take care of itself basically because we're just trying to make sure we're targeting the right people. The other thing to consider is the audience size. And again, we can go in many different directions on this, but like with LinkedIn ads, you have to have a minimum audience of at least 300 people. But the reality is, the bigger the audience, the less expensive it'll be to reach them. So if you have a small audience of like 3,000 people, and like we were just talking about, maybe 300 of those people are online on LinkedIn on a more regular basis, then you really narrowed your audience down really small. And then you're competing, you're right. It's really an auction system like Google Ads in a way. You're bidding against a much smaller pool. And then also your frequency might get higher, right? Because you're only getting in front of a very small amount of people, and then you can't really scale your budget as well. So there's always a trade-off between audience size and the cost of reaching them and how much ad creative and that stuff you need. Whereas in Sales Nav, I think I was just looking at your screen, and if you have 100 people in a search or a few hundred people, that's more than enough if you're sending some DMs and connection requests.
Yeah, that's a really good logic. I think it's common to my understanding among ad platforms to charge for like what is like even Google Ads, for example, like high CPC means it's a high value key term, like you said, bottom of the funnel. Um, I can see how the same logic kind of applies to choosing who you want to get your ads in front of, and people who if I'm LinkedIn, I'm thinking the people that are on the platform who are probably in like executive decision maker roles, who are active on the platform. That's probably a high value person that is in this list that you're thinking to retarget. It's probably going to cost more versus maybe someone who's at like an entry level role, who doesn't have like executive decision making power, who isn't as on as often. Is probably like a lower ad tool. Um,
Exactly, much more expensive. Yeah, the CEO of I don't know, a Series D, tech company has raised a lot of venture capital. Like those people could be over $50, or like I don't know, the CEO of Coca-Cola, whatever, right? Those people are going to be like a CPC of $100, $75, $50. Whereas the intern or the administrative assistant of like a 5-person company, it might be like $3.
mhm,
And that's something we didn't touch on with Meta ads, but in Meta, those CPCs are extraordinarily lower, right? It might be 50 cents, might be a dollar. On LinkedIn, the average is around $13 just for the CPC. And we could talk more about budget, but then it relates because you don't get as much data, right? If you're spending $100 to get like 8 clicks or 7 clicks, you can't really draw a lot of conclusive, like insights from that. Therefore, you need to spend more, which then, like you were saying, going back to about B2B, is like if you're selling uh, a service, a product, software, whatever that's over $10,000, let's say for the year, like LinkedIn is a great place to go, right? Because you're going to get that ROI back. But if you're selling something that's like a $50 a month SaaS subscription, you're never going to get a positive ROI because the cost to get that targeted and reach these people is going to be higher.
mhm. Yeah, so good. This is really good, by the way. You're very eloquent and you know your stuff. So, um, one thing I did want to ask is people may have questions about like ad formats. So, like for YouTube, for example, there are like the 5 second ads that play at the beginning, just kind of making a relatable example. Um, or a 5 second ad that plays at the beginning. There's ads that appear like at the bottom of the screen. There's different formats. Even Google the same way. You have the blue link ads, and you have the ads that appear elsewhere um, on like on site as well. With LinkedIn, are there various ad formats, and is there a recommendation or just different levels of effectiveness that one might have over another based on who the audience is? So, talk to me a little bit about like LinkedIn ad formats.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, there's a lot of different ad formats on LinkedIn. There's the traditional standard, like single image. Everyone's probably familiar with that. There's, of course, video, there's carousel, and those sorts of things. But LinkedIn is a pretty unique platform from other, we're talking about Meta ads and Google ads. On LinkedIn, there's a relatively newer ad format called thought leader ads. And you're probably familiar with this or you've heard of it, right? And it's just a fancy way of saying that, um, traditionally, all of the ads that would run on LinkedIn would come from the company page. So if you were to run an ad right now, traditionally it'd be from like MMG Design Studio, and that's where it's coming from. Thought leader ads means you can take your post, and we'll talk about this, right? Like you've got amazing content you've been posting, from your profile for a long time. So we can take one of those posts and say, I want this to be served as an ad to my ICP, like only going to these exact people, and it will come from your profile as Andy Milligan, and it will serve as an ad. And it looks and feels very native. And we could go deeper into thought leader ads because the click through rates are about 6 times higher, and the cost per click, the CPC, is about 6 times lower. So, whereas the benchmark is around $13 for a click on a regular ad, for a thought leader ad, it's about $2. And the click through rate, is traditionally is about a 0.5%, which, 1 in 200 people would click on your ad. For a thought leader ad, it's over 2 or 3%. And there's a lot of good reason for that. It's because people trust people. It's more relatable. Doesn't feel like some corporate content. It just feels like, here's someone who's just I don't know, posting about something that's I can relate to. It's more human. I can trust it. So there's thought leader ads. Then there's also document ads, which doesn't sound like much, but it's actually a PDF that you can put right into the feed. And so sometimes if you're scrolling the LinkedIn feed, you'll notice there can be a PDF that you can click the button and go through the pages. That can work really well to get high click through rates to build up a retargeting audience. Another thing we can talk about. And you can have it ungated so that you build up some brand awareness and educate your audience and pay it forward. And also, you can use it as gated content so that people can, maybe they can see the first 3 or 5 pages of a white paper or a report or that kind of thing. But then to get the full access to the document, they'd have to download it. Video, of course, I know I mentioned, but video is, I think, really important. It allows you to allows your audience to see you, hear your voice, relate to you, connect with you. Um, and you know, it's got to be short form nowadays. LinkedIn has very much been TikTokified, where people are not watching 3 minute, 2 minute videos. I mean, maybe there might be some cases where someone makes some extraordinary content with strong hooks and open loops and keeps people engaged throughout the whole time. But typically, like 20 or 30 second videos can perform well. But you know, strong hook in the beginning, just like any social media content, right? Like we're not having some big logo animation for the first 5 seconds, and then people just keep scrolling, right? And we can look at that data as well. Um,
Yeah.
there's a couple other ad formats. Oh, and the other big one I should talk about is called sponsored messaging, which there's two types. There's message ads and conversation ads. They're more or less just like in-mails. And those can work really well because if you're building up this retargeting audience of people who've been engaging with your thought leader content, your videos or document ads, or whatever content you have at the top of your funnel, you then get that retargeting audience that then you can say, oh, let me send a message into their, your a DM basically, right? And it's like an in-mail, and it will personalize, hey, Andy, blah, blah, blah. But those can really help to drive conversions and feel a lot more, basically get more, yeah, conversions and more people to take an action, right? Fill out a lead gen form or something like that.
Yeah. It's always a more productive activity to start from, even just for marketers in the audience. Like, it's always the most productive activity to start with people who have raised their hands in some extent, whether that's engaged on a past piece of content, who's already on your email list. It's going to be infinitely easier to, and a more effective use of, ad spend and marketing energy to retarget those people. um, One thing I did want to ask you too is, what types of, so I'm trying to think of how to word this. How, you mentioned it allows you to upload spreadsheets. So a lot of marketers are probably coming from some kind of an existing account list if they're totally new to LinkedIn ads. Facebook has like a pixel that allows you to integrate like website data. How much external information does LinkedIn allow you to bring in to it? And also, does it do does how well does it kind of mesh in with your organic content to kind of judge the performance in order to make the targeting more effective? Like, what else can you bring in to maybe make a first campaign the most effective as you possibly can?
Yeah, it's a great question. So LinkedIn has what they call the insight tag. It's basically the same thing as the metapixel, right? It's just some JavaScript goes on your website. You can retarget people with it. You can track conversions on it. And yeah, like we said, there's, if you have a target account list, here's the 200 companies that we really want to get in front of. You can upload that into LinkedIn and make sure you're targeting only those 200 companies and whomever within them or contacts. So you could do it that way as well. LinkedIn also integrates really nicely with HubSpot and also Salesforce. So if you have a list in HubSpot and an audience, you can have that automatically being synced. So and you also mentioned something that I think doesn't get enough time and attention, which is basically the people already in your CRM, in your email list, in your, they haven't really moved into like a sales conversation, but they're kind of in your marketing, right? And retargeting those people right in LinkedIn, that's usually some lower hanging fruit. So in terms of external data, there's all of that. There's also, as people move into the pipeline and become revenue, and you get some closed won deals, there's an integration. A great one is called Fibbler, but there's a few out there where you can then actually take the data both from LinkedIn and from your CRM and match them up and say, oh, like we're influencing this pipeline because this whatever deal that's being created, this person's been looking at our ads for the last 3 months. They've been clicking on them. They've been hitting our website. So you can see more of the customer journey and understand the influence and the attribution. Because frankly, um, a lot of the conversions and a lot of the impact of LinkedIn ads on your accounts and your prospects, it's not like the last click, like they see an ad, click it, and then book a demo. It's like they've been looking at your stuff over the course of weeks and months, and so you want to be able to measure that influence over time. Um, and then I know you had a second question that I didn't get to.
Yeah, no, no, you know that I one thing I did want to ask you is, like, kind of branching off what that second one was, is like, can you maybe um take us through like what a perfect, so someone comes into Tamarind and they're like, okay, Tom, we need your help with Google Ads. What could you create, like a hypothetical like perfect client, whether it's like in terms of offer clarity, type of audience, maybe company size, like who would be the perfect fit agnostically for a platform like running Google Ads? Maybe they have content history, something that like really gets you excited, like, hey, we could deliver great results for this person. And also maybe a conversation where like you could set expectations. So like maybe a scenario where you would turn someone away was like, okay, maybe this isn't the greatest use of your ad dollars or marketing energy. Just for people who are in the audience, maybe can kind of relate on both sides and see where they fit, like kind of the bullish best scenario versus maybe one that isn't a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, ideally for LinkedIn ads, you're a B2B company. You don't have to be, but that, usually makes the most sense. You have a ACV, average contract value, of at least $10,000, right? Or the LTV, sizable, right? We're not selling t-shirts here. And you have the ad budget for the next, let's say 6 months or 3 months of at least like $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. So we can really start getting data, right? Because the CPCs are higher, the sales cycles are longer. So we're not going to like run it for a month or two and be like, oh, it's working or it's not working, right? Sometimes the sales cycle might be like 3 or 6 months alone. So if you run it for 2 months and stop it, like, what are you really getting out of that? Um, and then well, you're right. Your other question. Oh, and then sorry. Some of the other components that are really helpful is if you like yourself, Andy, if you already are creating content on LinkedIn, you're already creating it from your own profile, that can really serve well as thought leadership content, which, like I mentioned, the CPCs are very low, click through rates are high, the trust is high. So if you have existing thought leadership content, that's great. Another important thing is if you have a great offer, and people really don't think about offers enough and a lot, but like if you think of what people, how they think LinkedIn, how they want it to work or how they kind of believe it works and how it actually works, it's very different. People believe that like, I'm just going to put some ads on LinkedIn, my target audience will see them, click on them, and then schedule a demo. Or at least that's what they're wishfully wanting is like schedule demos, like book some demos with my sales team and like, and that happens, but not how people are thinking about it. um, to get people to like book demos and sales meetings with you, they have to like have heard of your brand. They have to have seen it a few times. They have to have built trust and credibility. They have to have awareness of their own problem and pain point. They have to have awareness that like, oh, like you also are relevant and know about my pain and problem. And oh, you also have a solution for my pain. You know what I mean? So people kind of forget that like, oh, we'll just run some ads and then we'll get demos. It's like, no, we need to educate, build awareness, build trust, build credibility, have them even familiar that you have a product that can help solve their problem. And then they have to have enough curiosity and interest to want to schedule the demo to see more, learn more. And that's the SaaS case, right? There's also services. About half of the clients I work with are also in the B2B services space. So I know I'm talking about software, but services as well. So then what it boils down to is having a great offer and a great offer, right? Because if you want someone to convert, and imagine you, Andy, and anyone listening, like you have a busy schedule. You have your own priorities. You have meetings all day tomorrow and you've got, your own big projects and KPIs and things you're working on, right? So you're not like sitting on social media scrolling and thinking, let me just talk to this random company I've never heard of tomorrow at 2 o'clock and take 30 minutes out of my day to talk to some person I've never met before. Like nobody is doing it that way. So we have to have something that's a really strong offer that's like, you're going to get, your entire, I don't know, audit or evaluation or free consultation or strategy session or some other valuable thing I'm just going to give you that meets you where you are, right? So I'm not offering and selling my software and demo. It's more consultative, right? Like you have this pain and problem, and I'm going to offer you this free thing. If you have a high converting offer, your CPLs, your cost per lead drops extraordinarily. And then, you're getting more scaled up meetings and demos. And if you have that brand awareness and like you talked about with organic content, right? If people have already seen you and heard about you, you don't have to spend as much money and budget at the front of the funnel to build up that awareness. And that if you have a sales motion that's a little bit like more B2B enterprisey and you have existing white papers and other, I don't know, guides or things people can download, that can also be really helpful to, get a start, right? Start getting some leads in the door. These are not high intent people, but, it can give your salespeople something to work with and someone to be nurturing. And maybe 3 or 6 months, they eventually become a demo. So having those resources and assets in place. And of course, there's things like product market fit, right? I can't control that. Like, hopefully, people really want what you're offering, but that's a huge factor. And then to go back to one question from a while back, which I know you want to know, is about your organic content, right? So if you have organic content that's performing well and you're looking, there's a few things that combine when you look at organic content and you're trying to evaluate, oh, this like worked really well organically. Maybe I should just, leverage it and amplify it and run as ads. Um, when you're seeing the let's say the number of impressions and the number of engagements and clicks and comments and likes and that stuff on your organic content, that's kind of been put there by the algorithm saying it was getting a high enough click-through rate and engagement and shares and saves, or all the different factors they're looking at, that they decided let's run it more because it's helpful for people. So you have to keep in mind that like the algorithm is using its own, what I mean, it's sort of creating the number of what you might look at as success for organic content, which does tell you something important. But then, of course, the other thing is, if you're just sort of grabbing attention, but there's not really any substantial meat that helps basically what you're trying to do, get people to become aware of you and then kind of demonstrate maybe some of your expertise, or show them how to solve a problem they have, right? So you just want to also think about, is this just like goofy fun stuff? And that's okay, you can have some of that at the top of the funnel, but of course you don't want people to, you don't want to pay money just so people can see the fun stuff. You also want to be helping them with their problems and that sort of thing. And then also you can test it directly in the LinkedIn ads platform, and so then you have all things being equal, you can see what are the click-through rates, what are the dwell times, are people spending 2 seconds or 10 seconds? And then ultimately the real measure is what actually generates you a sales meeting or a pipeline. And then you can also look at that data as well and see which ads people were seeing. But there's always going to be this sort of, I don't want to call it a black box, but this unknown psychology where you're never going to fully know exactly how someone is seeing your content, what they're thinking about it. You get indicators like they liked it, they commented on it, they DM'd me, and now they're a prospect and maybe they're interested in working together. But you're never going to fully know what's happening within someone's psychology. So you definitely need to make some decisions based on some of your you know assumptions and a framework of like what the customer journey, you've seen it look like in the past, and how you think your ICP thinks and what you think would get them to be, dying to get on a sales call with you like a couple of months from now.
Yeah, dude, so good. So much of that. I mean, I'll even say too, like a big value of posting on a lot of the same principles apply to organic content and paid content. Um, Being especially so many times as a case with a lot of B2B offers, um, is being top of mind at the time of need. And paid LinkedIn allows you to kind of stretch your surface area for that happening. I mean, if you even look at like some of the most common B2B buying triggers, like what actually creates the point of need to where people in marketing or decision makers are booking calls and taking RFPs, things like that. It's when a job shift occurs, it's when someone's new in a role, a round of funding, things like that. Those are things that you can't really plan ahead for if you're someone that's trying to um, be present only at that moment of need. You really have to be present at all times, and then be the first. And obviously, have trust, authority, be the people that are the ones that are being recommended to the service provider, because the first place they also go is when they reach out to mutual connections, like who's an authority in the space. Um, I will say too, you did a good job of touching on promoted posts. I don't know if you listen to any of Alex Hormozzi's content, but he talks a lot about like more of the Facebook ads. It's a big part of like what he does for his. Talks about it in his books and in his ecosystem. And I've promoted 2 posts in the past just because it was like something I wanted to experiment with. And it was the same day. He's talking about he's talking about Facebook, but he said the promoted button is what we call the donate to Zuck button, because you don't get any of the granularity in terms of targeting or knowing what you're doing. I don't know what they call that on LinkedIn. It's like the donate to Reed Hoffman or something like that, the founder of LinkedIn. But
Microsoft.
having the granular controls is what's going to make what's going to make paid ads more effective. So yeah, so much of what you said there really resonates, and you really know your stuff.
It's
Um,
true. That promoted, basically sponsoring a post the way they present it to you, you don't get the granularity and the targeting. And that's, a large part of why you're using LinkedIn, is making sure you're getting it in front of the right people. And so you really need to get like under the hood in Campaign Manager to make sure you're reaching the right people. And then, yeah, I've audited ad accounts and just seen so much money wasted because LinkedIn is also trying to make money, right? And so they're sometimes offering and default recommending for you things that are not actually going to help you reach your goals. And just the way, I could talk more through it, but like, I'm thinking of a Series E company. I audited their LinkedIn ads account not that long ago, and $30,000 spent, 0 leads. so many issues and how they, and this is by seasoned marketers, Andy, who like have been doing marketing for a long time. They know what they're doing, but once you get like deeper into a platform that has these little nuances, I just see really amazing marketers just sort of, okay, like I guess this box should be checked. And I think this makes sense to show this kind of ad. And then I look at it and I have to kind of shake my head because um, you can just blow so much money. There's even, just to give you an example, there's a default bidding strategy called maximum delivery. And it's the default one and it's, recommended. And you think, oh, like that sounds right. I should probably just maximize delivery and let LinkedIn take care of it. That usually results in like you're bidding 3 times higher than you need to because you can put in a manual bid and say, I'm willing to bid this much per click. And so when it's running automated the way it's, initially set up, I see people just, spending 3 times more than they need to per click. And that affects everything downstream. If you're trying to generate leads, your leads are going to be, 3 times the cost and one third as many. So there's just
Yeah.
all these little nuanced campaign settings.
Yeah. That's because marketers, they'll always know the principles. Good marketers, at least, they'll know the principles, but a lot of times the execution of like applying them to a very targeted output, that's mean we speak to the value of working with specialists all the time. I think it's going to become increasingly more important. Um, So yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And just to emphasize your last point of like knowing what type of content is actually better for your audience, like feel good stuff will get a lot more like engagement and reach versus like practical, helpful stuff for your narrow defined audience may not get as many impressions or as viral reach, but that's what's actually going to convert better. That's the entire story of my content journey so far is like literally yesterday. I posted like a selfie in front of because I just bought a new house. Um, and I posted a selfie in front of the new house, said life update, bought a new house, a couple descriptions of that. 5,000 impressions and 221 engagements and 85 comments. And then today, the very next day, the exact same time I was online, like all the best practices, posted a 1.5 hour, or I posted a preview for a 1.5 hour long B2B Webflow SEO course. So we just launched on YouTube. And in the same, posted that like 3 hours ago. It has 3 engagements, 1 comment, and 81 impressions. But I know like to the exact buyer, like that's the type of content we need to be putting out more, not like, you know, a shirtless photo in front of the house or whatever. So
Yeah,
I
I
would encourage.
saw that. And I love the photo, by the way. I think it grabs people's attention and it's more broadly accessible, right? So anyone on LinkedIn can see this, like it, feel great for you. And congratulations, by the way. But yeah, it is the problem when, you actually want to talk about what's important and relevant for, your prospects and your audience. It's like, well, most people, it doesn't mean anything to them, right? There's your cousin, your roommate from college, like they're just kind of scrolling right by it. And so then how do you bridge that gap? And I'm curious what you think, Andy, because I've been thinking about this more. How do you bridge the gap between getting attention and being relevant, but also kind of focusing on, like becoming either a thought leader, but also, it's content that's going to be helpful for your ICP? Like, have you thought about just grabbing attention versus something that's relevant for them?
Yeah, well, I think you put it good in the beginning of the chat was like having some awareness around like what's top of funnel, minimum funnel, bottom of funnel. And I ran through this exercise a couple months ago of just like, because I mean, I think marketers especially are very like the schedule drives, like the content calendar drives the work versus like the intentionality behind it. So like, yeah, I mean, I try and keep the audience in mind, like as I'm creating content, but like sometimes it's like you have to fill the day, and sometimes not missing a day is more important too. Um, but I will say too, like the thing that creates, and I'm in a community where they're just talking about like the newest like algorithm report and how it's very important to focus on like a very defined um, segment of what you do and repeat that over and over. And even like the posts that you engage on now are even more of a ranking factor in terms of who your content is being shown to. Um, but I think for marketers listening, just, knowing like beforehand, like, okay, this might get a lot of impressions, a lot of reach, but it may not convert as well or be as long-term effective. But there is a value also in just like, and it's like the same with the podcast too. Like I've had guests on who weren't like 100% in marketing, but they have a big audience and they elevate the IP of the show, which then makes it easier to get on better guests and people that I really want to talk to and things like that. But Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm not going to pretend to have it all figured out, but I do know that the more, and you just said it too, like making ads effective, you have data to work with. Like all of this stuff is just kind of reps. And I have a master spreadsheet with almost every post from the last 3 years of like the copy, the link to it, and just a general sentiment in terms of impressions. So having data is never going to be a bad thing. And then that's kind of what allows you to kind of steer the ship in the right direction, just picking up on those signals that the organic traffic does send you. So
That's amazing. Yeah, and something I was doing recently was just taking similar data that you have, right, and the copy and how it performed, and just throwing it into Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, and just seeing what it comes back with. And it's really interesting. Like some things I would have said, nah, I should run this one, not that one. It has some good rationale of like, actually, this is relevant for your ICP, and this would probably be helpful for them. Um, Even though I thought like the other way around. So it's really hard to figure that part out, especially if you have so much content, which is a good problem to have, right? Sometimes people have like zero content and they're like, I want to run ads. It's like, well, we need to run something to them.
right, exactly. Um, well, dude, awesome. What I would love to do is, I know we talked about some a little bit beforehand, but doing a little bit of maybe some tactical hands-on stuff that'll allow you to really show your expertise. In the position of a potential marketer listening, I'm thinking, okay, I have a general awareness. I have sales nav. I have a general awareness of who my target audience is. Um, I have like a list. Bridging that between, I want to pull up Sales Navigator, but I would love your advice in terms of like what you're seeing and the filters, how like the list size in terms of uh, and obviously all of this varies in terms of what the deliverable industry, ticket value. So like to add context for the listeners, we sell Webflow websites to healthcare, and our flagship is a 20K website build. So having that context going to what they're seeing, but then just like taking this data and sales nav and it's like, okay, what's the next step? Like what website do we go to set up ads? And just kind of see your process, like maybe pick apart what you're seeing.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it. If you want to share your screen, we could walk through it. If you don't have an ad account, it's a few clicks to create one. And then once you have one, we can, start building a campaign and an ad set and the audiences. Um, My one of my questions for you actually is, what are your goals? Because I talk to a lot of different companies that want to run ads, and even when they say the goal is like something like brand awareness, it's usually ultimately to get sales and get deals. But then also the other question is, what is your patience like and your sort of leap of faith versus you need to see something immediate now? Because the let's say the founders or CEOs who like need to know that it's working within like 60 days, and we're just like trying to get some initial data and figure it out. We can generate some MQLs. I don't know if that's very helpful for your sales team, but sometimes people want that, right?
Yeah.
Versus, if we're going to look at a 3 month, a 6 month, or some longer time period, inside of 3 months, we might look at top of funnel metrics like impressions and clicks and click through rates and dwell time and engagements and all this stuff. But people will say like, well, that's not revenue. I can't make revenue on likes and comments, which is true, right? So then, anyway,
Yeah.
I'm giving you some long-winded context, but like, what would you say are your goals and time frame, and what does success look like for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's like well, almost what I was positioning is like setting expectations in the bear case, because the worst possible thing you can do is when you invest in a new channel or a new variation of a new channel is get to the point where you haven't done it all the way through to be effective. Like say you're 3 months in and it's like, oh, we haven't seen a conversion yet. And then if you stop there, you're guaranteed to lose. Whereas if you continue, especially in B2B, you can make up your ad costs very quickly if you just generate just like 2 to 3 sales. Um, and like I was at a conference in Florida at the end of last year, and I won't say the company's name, but they're based in New York, and they have a web and SEO agency, and they're called Takeoff. I didn't know to say their name, but they average 60K project cost, like that's their floor minimum, and they're spending 30K a month on ads. And that, I mean, to maybe a smaller marketer who's looking, or who's referencing a budget where it's like, man, that's like double my entire budget for the month. Um, you look at that and they can get overwhelmed. But you have to reference it. You have to have faith in your offer, how well it's converted in the past, your positioning, and really kind of detract. And that's like the classic business owner financial view versus the like the overly involved emotional view of finances. Is you really have to view it um, as necessary. Like it keeps the lights on and it's an opportunity for bigger bets. So to answer your question too, um, anything that to me, like anything that maintains a certain level of profitability, I would say 60%. So it lands a 20K project, then upwards of 10,000 to where it makes sense month over month. And I know it takes a certain number of months to actually ramp that up. Um, but yeah, I think just making it a simple math equation and saying, okay, this is what we sell a service business. So we have in-house contractors that we use. All of that's kind of factored into the product cost or the project cost. So we don't have to go in and outsource and bring a whole team together. There's not added cost on top of that. So I would say like a certain 60% level of profitability would still be worth it for us. So whatever that is off of project cost of 20K, maybe in the realm of maybe 10 to 15K per closed lead that we could use in ad spend, I think would make sense. Does that logic kind of track?
It does. The other tricky thing is it's sort of like sample size, right? Like let's say in the first, I don't know, 2 months or 3 months, let's look at two scenarios, right? Scenario one is you get two deals and you're like, dude, this RO or three deals, this ROI is amazing. Like, let's dump more money into it versus another scenario where you get zero deals. You're like, this isn't working. And of course, anyone at a certain time frame and amount of pain and investment and money that might not see again, might never see again, they're going to say, okay, this isn't working. I'm stopping. It's been 3 months and I'm getting no deals. But like, what if the fourth month they would have gotten two deals and you've built up all of that awareness and retargeting and there's no right answer. It's just sort of the issue I also even have mentally where if I'm putting myself in someone else's shoes or even in my own shoes, right? If I'm looking at a channel for myself, right? Like OpenAI ads or even LinkedIn ads for myself, anything, I'm also thinking through this, right? Like, is there value being created that's sort of hidden in someone's awareness of me or of, this company I'm running ads for? And then they convert like 7 months later. I've literally seen deals created 24 months later. And it's like, who has the patience for that, right? Who's going to say, I'm going to be putting all this money in for 6 months and see, some payback like 2 years later? Like, people are not thinking like that.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. It's like the same logic with conferences. It's like
Yeah.
um, I've had someone that I went to a conference in Atlanta and met someone, and it was over a calendar year later. So much of that is investing, going first, and being that person when the time comes up. But a lot of this pre work and that's why I think it's in B2B as a whole, and a lot of B2B marketers can relate to this. Is like the idea is it's hard to reinforce behaviors as positive when there's such a long lag in the reinforcement
Yeah.
um, that determines that. So it's like if you all you see is like the punishment now. It's like all you see is like, oh, the plane ticket, the conference fees, get up at 5 in the morning, buy this Uber, go here. All you're seeing is like ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And then
And the time and the opportunity
that
cost too.
yeah. Yep.
All right, keep going. This is good. No, I'm with you. Keep going.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say it's like when feedback loops are long, then that's when it's increasingly hard to use. That's why you have to have like the internal conversation in the middle. It's like, okay, prepare for the situation when we start to question ourselves, and then acknowledge that beforehand. It's like, yeah, we've already had this conversation. Let's get alignment, whether it's leadership or whoever's responsible for the budget, and say like, okay, this is a possibility. But beforehand, we've done the research. We know that this is a long tail effort, but it's also pointed in the right direction, so we can pursue it with full conviction, even if we don't get immediate results. If you go to Sales Navigator, I have a few pre-saved searches, but what Sales Navigator does is if you go to the leads filter, you can create saved searches. I have a bunch of these just for
Perfect.
some of the targeting that we've done. So for a first campaign, and we haven't opened the ads side of this yet, but if marketers are creating a list and it's their first campaign, rough audience size without more context than that. I've watched cold email courses or cold outbound courses where it's like, okay, you want to have between 1 and 3,000, or maybe it's ideal. I know the first one I showed you was like 90. Talk to me a little bit about audience size if it's for a first campaign that a marketer might be running.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a really important one, actually. Um, in a perfect world, and LinkedIn themselves, they'll recommend a very large audience size, like over 50,000 people. Now, if you have a very niche and narrow audience or you're running some ABM stuff, you might not even get anywhere near to 50,000, and that's okay. But just keep in mind that as your audience size gets smaller and smaller, your cost goes up and up because there's less people maybe online to reach, and then there's more competition, right? You're not going to find the, let's call it, the cheaper people out there to reach. So, ideally, if I'm running an ad campaign on LinkedIn, I'd love to have at least 10,000 people. But again, it depends. Are we just building awareness and generating demand? And is this top of funnel, or are we trying to get some conversions and some leads coming through? In which case, we do want a bigger audience. But it's okay to run a smaller audience. You just have to keep in mind, those issues that will come up. But LinkedIn will force you to have at least 300 people in a campaign, in an audience, to run the ads. But you will see the price will go up quite a bit. So it's a sweet spot. You want to be focused and targeted on your ICP that makes sense, but you also want it to be as big as also makes sense. You don't want to be too broad, but you want to try to find a sweet spot. It's as big as makes sense, but also it's targeted.
Awesome. Yeah. So I would say too, like if you work at a company where it's a very specific ICP, then maybe trying to include like the upper bounds of the amount of accounts that you could be getting in front of. So it's like if leadership has approved like a list of like maybe under 1,000 or 500 or so accounts, that's like, okay, let's for our first ad campaign, let's really try and stretch the needle in terms of who could be a potential buyer of this, even if you are very niche, and encourage yourself to go a little bit upwards. Um,
Exactly.
so I have a bigger list here, and I have these filters set, and marketers you can watch like a LinkedIn sales. Now, of course, that's not the scope of this video. But say I have this list. What would be next step? I have a list agreed on. It has all my proper filters, industry, everything like that set. Um, would the next step be going in and creating a Google Ads account, or would it be something natively you do in here?
Yeah, LinkedIn ads. Yeah. So basically, when you go to, if you want to just go to the LinkedIn, because I'm not, okay, there you are, right? And then on the top right where it says sales nav, click on that and go down. Oh, sorry. Can you go back to the last tab? They move things around. Where it says for business, my apologies. Click that. And then it says advertise on the left. Yep, there you go. Click there. And this will show us if you have any ad accounts. Um, so let's see. Maybe you would want a new ad account for MMG, right?
Yeah, I have not created one.
That's okay. It only takes a second.
I associate the company page with it.
Yep.
And while we're doing this, maybe a good question to answer is what is the value of the LinkedIn company page these days? Um, doesn't sound like it's as effective for ads, given that thought leader ads maybe get more visibility, lower click-through rates, etc., or lower ad costs, etc. But what would you say the value of the company page stands on LinkedIn, and more specifically in terms of ads?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to talk about that. I mean, and by the way, there's a little blue button at the bottom left that says create later. Sorry, it's not a button, it's like text. Yeah, you could click that because this will try to walk you through some. You can say no thanks. There you go. And this is now we're in the platform. We can go through it. Um, you know, just like how Facebook, this was like 10 or 15 years ago, they used to show like posts in the feed from someone's, like Facebook page. And then they eventually did less and less and less. Now what people have to pay to advertise. It's the same on LinkedIn. So the latest stat I saw is that the organic content in your LinkedIn feed, only 2% of it is posts from your company page. So in a lot of ways, the LinkedIn company page is not really as important as maybe it was a few years ago. But what I've seen is about maybe 10 to 20% on average of people who are seeing your ads click on and go look at the company page. So, it's got to be there for credibility and for, presence and that sort of stuff. But like, you don't want to spend a ton of time and effort into like trying to unless you're, for whatever reason, your company page posts are getting amazing engagement. And you don't want to look like a ghost town, like you haven't put a banner image on there or the last post was from 6 months ago. But otherwise, I wouldn't spend much time on it because a company page post might get like 200 impressions maybe, but with LinkedIn ads, we're going to get like over 100,000 impressions exactly to our ICP, right? The organic company page posts impressions might even just be like random people in your network that are nowhere near your ISP.
Yeah. So I think the values of Extend more so for like the psychological and maybe off platform benefits. There's probably an argument to be made in terms of how it could work with like AI search visibility and stuff like that, matching to a company name. But for LinkedIn ads, sticking to more so just a credibility point, and given that most of the efforts are going to be done from a personal account. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The company page, trust, credibility, brand awareness, it needs to be there. But yeah, now that we're on the platform, there are a lot of places we can go. I think if you go to plan and go to audiences, it might be the best place for us to start. But there's a lot of So and this would be a matched audience. Yeah, there you go. Good. So we're on the saved audiences tab. Click on create audience, and you can dismiss that blue pop up on the right there. It says create new audience. The big blue box at the top, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, what is there? 290 million people on LinkedIn. We're going to start narrowing this down. But this is where you're going to start seeing a lot of the same filters that you just saw in Sales Nav. But keep in mind, there's no keyword search box, right? So, yeah, the first one is it people in the US? Um, yeah. Okay. And then there's a little drop down up there. It says recent or permanent. You can say permanent. So it's people who live here. If you just scroll up to the top, yep, click that. There you go. Yep. Permanent. So it's not people traveling. Okay, cool. We can keep going down. Yeah. So now your target audience, and then go down where it says narrow. Yep. Now this is where we can start to find it could be seniorities and job functions, or it could be job titles. Now LinkedIn lets you choose one or the other. Job titles can be very narrow and granular, which could be a good thing, but it can keep your audience size small. Um, if you look at the job functions and seniorities, it's broader, which can make your audience size bigger. So, yep, you can go to job experience if we want to go that way, right? And then you can look at functions and seniorities or job titles. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Or we could test both, right? It's good to create two audiences and then to see what they look like.
yeah, let's do it. Um, I think we'll go functions, and maybe we could set marketing here.
Mhm.
That would make sense logically. Um, and then maybe under experience, we could go to seniorities. Probably want to go upper level here. So like VP, um, CXO, director, maybe manager. Does that seem like too many or too broad for
This is
seniorities?
fine to start, but I want to point out something critical that I was telling you about that company that spent $30,000 and everything was screwed up.
Oh,
What LinkedIn already did, and I wonder now maybe if this is a intentional default setting, they threw an or in between where you have the job function and the seniority. So basically, right now, the targeting, if you left it as is, it would say anyone who works in a marketing department or anyone who's a VP in any department, right? And just, yeah, there you go. Good. So now it's an end. And if you scroll, let me think, if you scroll the top for a second, the top of this, yep, we see the audience size is still 1.4 million. It's still huge, but when that or was in there, it was probably over 10 million because you're like anyone who's a VP or anyone who's in a marketing department. Yeah, you could click that if we're curious just to see. Yeah, 37 million people, right? So this is where people screw up on targeting and it's just money burnt.
dude, think about that. Like it's literally one click, and it's like potentially thousands of dollars if you don't have an expert looking at the stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's change it
it,
back before we forget because
yeah, I was gonna
it's
say
terrifying. Yeah.
that's it.
Good. So 1.4 million people. Now, the next thing to think about is the company size and the company industry, right? We haven't done those yet.
Yep, company. I think company category would be a good one because we have a niche. So, uh,
Actually, go to company industries. It's
yeah, healthcare has like 10 different ones with sales. And yeah, hospitals, healthcare, mental healthcare, health human services. Let's just check them all for the sake of the example. Not that one. Um, cool. That looks acceptable. X out of that. Company boom.
and
Company
then
revenue
size.
size. Okay.
I tend to trust size more because revenue, LinkedIn is using proxies to try to understand that. But I think this is much more accurate company size.
Yeah, we could go not that size. 11 to sold in this range before. That would make sense to me. We can do that.
And you're not going to believe it, but look what LinkedIn did above where you have the and, right? So you've got the
Yeah.
marketing and
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
And there's another, okay, good. There's another one actually. It's or company size. Um, in the block above it, see they make this box with that little pencil icon. Click, yeah, that one, because there's another or in there. That one by company size. Oh, wait, that was correct because that's the one in between. Yeah, that one. Well, we want the end. We want a requirement. You have to have all these requirements, right? You have to be in the
yeah,
marketing department and senior and in this industry and this company size.
man. Yeah, my brain doesn't work in this.
No, you're
In
doing
this.
good. This is great. Let's scroll up to the top and see what the current audience size is. 76,000 people. So we've narrowed down a lot. This is good.
Yeah,
And this is a great audience size, but if you wanted to, we can narrow down further.
yeah. Let's move forward with this one for the sake of time and example.
Yeah,
And
so
you,
click the blue button, apply. You have to click that before you click save, otherwise you'll lose everything. I don't know why. So at the top where it says manage on the top right, there's a little drop down. Yep. Click save, give it a name. Great. Now we have our audience saved. And you can click that top back arrow on the top left and we can leave the audience section. Cool. So there it is, 76,000 members. So there's our audience. Now, if we want to start, and we're skipping a lot of steps here, but just to kind of get into the meat of it for you. So if you click on the left on advertise, and okay, you already have a group there. We could maybe use that existing one. Just um, hover over, actually, click on where it says new campaign. Actually, sorry, click on when you hover over new campaign, click on edit. Let's just see what the settings are like. So good. You have that off and okay, this is fine. Yeah, so we can create a new ad set within this campaign. LinkedIn just renamed everything. It got really confusing. So you can get out of, yeah, you can give it a name. That's good. You can save that. Everything looks good. Yep. And now we're going to create an ad set within it. So if you hover over that, where it says podcast campaign that you just created, yep, and click the plus ad set button. So this is now an ad set within a campaign. So you can have like, let's say 3 different ad sets in one campaign. So, okay, the first, most important thing we're going to do is set our objective. Before we do that, Andy, let's discuss what kind of content we're putting in here. So is this the top of funnel thought leadership content coming from you, or is there something else we want to run?
yes, top of funnel thought leadership content.
Okay. So, which is good. This is what I would recommend. So, LinkedIn only allows us to have 2 objectives for this. It's either brand awareness or engagement. Let's select engagement because we want to build up the retargeting audience versus just getting a lot of impressions. Then you can click the blue button that says next at the bottom. Okay. We're going to do classic. It sounds terrible. It's actually way better. Accelerate is AI and it's really terrible. Um, I've only seen anyone lose money with their AI campaigns. Okay. Then just click next. I don't know why they added this screen here. All right. So now we're going to give this ad set a name. So at the top, it says engagement. You can give it a name at the top there. You could call it like thought leader ads or whatever you think. Great. We've got our objective is engagement. Um, I honestly don't use a lot of the stuff. They keep adding in features as you're scrolling down, right? So I just kind of skip this. I skip that. But we already built our audience. So on there next to audience, it says saved audiences. Yep, there it is.
The one we
Okay.
just made. Yep.
Yep. So we went from 290 million to 76,000. Great. Keep scrolling down. Keep going. And over here, we could add exclusions. See at the blue, it says narrow and it says exclude. Normally
Yeah.
we would do this too. We don't have to worry about it for now, but sometimes even though you just told LinkedIn, I only want to target the VPs and the chief marketing, the chief whatever officers sometimes it'll still show it to people who are not even in that. So I always add in exclusions just to be double sure because sometimes people work at 2 different companies. I don't know if they're a CEO at one company and intern at another. And this is another one of these sneaky little things where it says enable audience expansion, which is by default checked for you. You definitely want to uncheck that green checkbox there. It's another sort of money waster because LinkedIn would just show your ads to some other people kind of similar to what we did, but like we already know these are the people we want to target. So don't waste our money targeting other people who are not this.
Yeah, amazing. Yep.
Yeah. And then for your thought leadership content, for the posts that you've created from your LinkedIn profile, are most of them image, video, or text?
Man. Yes. So we have a lot. We don't do as many carousels. Most of them are image with text. Them are video. We do at least 2 videos a week. Um, I this is kind of a tangent, but I've seen. I don't know if you've heard of Exit Five. It's a B2B marketing
Yep.
community.
Hmm.
I have been fed the ad of Dave Gearhart, who's the founder of that community, and it's a video ad, and he's like, I know they do this stuff on purpose because I think they have like a lot of experts behind this stuff, but he's like in front of a window, and it's like the way the sun like reflects, and it's like really eye catching in terms of like a video hook. And that's kind of more in your realm in terms of like high converting ad content, but I think like if I'm thinking about I use LinkedIn exclusively on desktop, um, which I don't think is. I think I think it depends on, your buyer type. I think desktop is probably LinkedIn in particular is probably has more desktop users than any other social platform. But
You'd be
I think
surprised.
like
80%
really,
of LinkedIn users are on mobile.
really
You'd be surprised. And I've seen campaigns where it's like, it varies by industry and who you're targeting. I've seen it be as high as 95%, and I've seen it be 70%. Now, they just also released something where you can make sure you're only targeting people on one platform or another, which is great if you're trying to, get like some demos or, but yeah, it's weird.
interesting.
But it's weird, but it's true because, everyone's on their phones, they have the apps. And if you just look at usage, yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well,
But you
good to
could
know.
also look at the data too, right? So if we start, you run $100 of spend, you can go and figure out, oh, are people seeing my ads on mobile or on desktop?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Man, people aren't like me. Yeah, I think about like video on mobile is like just like the UI of like how LinkedIn presents the video, it like kind of hides the copy. I can't visualize like what
Yeah.
LinkedIn ads might look like, but I would be if I know something's an ad, I wouldn't click into the video. Just me personally, but I
Yeah.
mean that can be
The
more. So
fact that it's an ad is usually hidden pretty well. It says promoted in tiny gray text. And when I've like done this in person with people, they have no idea they're looking at an ad. Now, savvy people are going to know, I know the difference, but it's like, unless you're aware of it and looking for it, it just feels like part of your feed. When we're running thought leadership ads, like I said, there is a constraint on the types of objectives. There is a constraint on the types of ad formats. So it's either got to be single image or video or text, which would fall under the single image. So we can't run if you have carousel images or if you have a document or whatever, we can't do those. But then also we can do both. It would just have to be two separate ad sets. So let's say if we're doing single image now as an ad set, which is fine, then we create another ad set for video.
interesting. All very helpful. I mean, I thought I was savvy, but I didn't even know like default user behavior. So, okay, say I wanted to go with a single image.
Yeah.
That's the ad format I've set on. Now it's giving me tracking parameters and then
And
more.
we scrolled right past another one of these sneaky things, and this is a big budget waster. Yeah, go past the URL tracking parameters. Now here it says placements, and see it. There's a green checkbox that says LinkedIn Audience Network. That's the second big like money waster. Yeah, so you're going to uncheck that because, and if you look at it says under there like trusted third party publishers where LinkedIn audience is engaged. And I looked at their list recently, and it was something ridiculous. It was like Sudoku.com and like random websites. Like, and what happens is the CPCs get really low. It's like, oh, it's only $1 per click. And so someone will look at their metric and be like, wow, I'm getting like dollar clicks. This is amazing. But then it's just never converts. They're on different website. Like we don't want that. So
Yeah,
LinkedIn selling inventory, but we want what's going to work. So we're going to keep that unchecked.
interesting. It seems like, and just kind of a high level thought when we go over this. I've interviewed several Google Ads specialists in the past. Um, Shout out to Peter from Profit Mill in Michigan. And his recommendation, I think it's more unique, and this is one of the big differences between LinkedIn and Google, is that um, the automated process because a lot of more people self-run Google ads than they do LinkedIn ads because it's a lot easier. Like Google has invested a lot into making I think they call it like Performance Max or something like that, where it's like out of the box, you're already getting like a pretty good setup and it makes it like super white glove and easy for someone who's never done it before to do it. I would draw a huge contrast to what I'm seeing now. Like even several of the fields that you mentioned, like it's not as easy to run, nor is it meant to be yet. And I imagine in the future it'll improve just because they want to spend more money here. But the platform in its current state is not like there's no like AI checkbox you can click and then it'll get it, 90% of the way there. You still have to go in and make sure you're checking all the boxes here.
That's right. Yeah. And you don't know which boxes to check.
But
Um,
yeah, exactly.
yep. And then we could set a daily budget. You could put, the minimum is $10. So you can just put daily budget is fine. Just for the sake of this example, you can put in whatever you want. Um, and then bidding strategy. So this is the one I was telling you about before. Maximum delivery. Oh, great. It's like, just like you said, oh, great. It'll run the ads for me and figure out the bidding for me. No, it's usually about 3 times the cost. There are some situations where you want max delivery. Like if your audience size was like 1,000 people or 500 people, you'll struggle to reach them and you don't want to manually bid. But see, they hide under show additional options down there is a little blue text. There you go, manual bidding. Click that. Now, when you're here, it gives you this range 490 to 797. Oftentimes, you can bid even below the range and still get your clicks and spend your daily budget. So you can throw a bid in here of like, I don't know if it's $3.50 or $4. And you test and see. If you're spending the budget, you can lower it. If you're not spending the budget, you increase it. But we just saved ourselves a ton of money.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
Very
And
interesting.
then we're all good here on the campaign and the ad set. Now just click on the blue next button in the bottom right. Yep. And now for the thought leader ads, we're going to browse existing content because it already exists. And then you're going to type your name into there.
Yeah, I was wondering where we're going to cross over from like company led to yeah. And for marketers in the audience too, there is a LinkedIn ads library, to my understanding, where you can pretty much like search for any company. It's more in like a URL based structure like this, um, and search for any company to see what ads they've run and kind of just preview them, kind of like the LinkedIn ads transparency
Yeah,
URL. And
they have a ads library.
yeah, and I'm not sure if you get data or insights into like how long that they've run them. But I would imagine if you see a company's been running an ad for a long time, that probably means it's converting well. So maybe you can take
Yeah.
notes if like
Or
someone in your
sometimes I find companies that run ads for a long time and they just don't know what they're doing and they're just blowing money on stuff. Yeah, it's the LinkedIn ad library. If you just Google it, it'll come up and you can look at competitors. But yeah. Um, basically now that you're at the yeah, there you go. And they just added some more data, but it's been pretty and there's one more. There you go. Yep. So now you can type in the name of the company or whatever you want and you can look at some competitor ads.
yeah, absolutely good resource, but
Yeah.
not
Great.
a
Great call out. Awesome. And then, yeah, so basically you would request approval, right? Because if you weren't Andy and you were trying to run someone else's content, they would have to approve it. So you'd click that button. It will send a link. So you'll get an email. I don't know if it's right now or in 5 minutes. And then you can auto approve any future requests. So yeah, the rest from here, Andy, I think you would be good to go because basically once, later on today, you'll go back to your email, you'll approve the request. And then you'll just, the bottom right, the blue button will light up to say add to ad set. You'll add it. And then from there, you're just really pushing a button to get it live. Keep in mind, we also did like a pretty quick, rough setup, right? There's other nuances. We want the insight tag installed on the website. What else? We can do UTM parameters. There's a whole bunch more lead gen forms. There's all kinds of stuff. But I think this is a good, first walkthrough.
yeah, dude, this was awesome. Got to see really like under the hood's view, see like okay, setting an audience, setting filters, um, and tying that back to existing content, and a lot of good, a lot of your awesome thoughts on what makes ads effective in the first place.
Yeah. And I
Um,
would definitely look at the different performance. If you I mean, you could do like 5 of your posts or 10. I mean, it's really up to you. If you do 30, or you have so much content, right? You're in a really good position. If you did 30, you'd probably get so little data per post, unless you had a massive budget, that would take you forever to kind of get something more definitive. But you'll monitor basically the average dwell time, the click through rate. You'll see if people are liking it or commenting on it, all that kind of data, and that can help guide you in terms of what's performing, what's not performing.
Dude, this was amazing. And we managed to fit it in our time allotment too. So, but dude, Tom, this is like far and above. I know we didn't have we kind of shot from the hip a little bit in terms of the format.
It was
Um,
fun. No, this is great.
yeah,
I'm glad we got to actually. I mean, we can't say we launched a campaign, but we're pretty
yeah,
much at the finish line.
yeah, we're almost there. It's removed a lot of ambiguity in my mind from the topic, and I think for a lot of the marketers listening as well, makes it more approachable and perhaps a good recommendation for their company, their leadership, if it's something worth investing in. But my question to you is kind of as we land the plane here is what makes it easy for to recognize, what would be good clients of yours? So that if maybe marketers are in the audience are listening and they need help with LinkedIn ads, what makes it easy for them to either make a referral to you or reach out to you for help on all this confusing LinkedIn ad stuff?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Andy. I'm more than happy to help any B2B, business that's looking to run LinkedIn ads, especially SaaS and AI, but also B2B marketing, any kind of services. And if you're selling a deal size that's at least $10,000, then you'll have the budget, and the ROI makes sense. If it's a smaller, sales price, then Meta ads might be a better place, or maybe Google ads. OpenAI ads is really interesting right now. The CPCs are very low. But yeah, really appreciate you having me, Andy, and you're awesome, and excited to share this as well, and excited to help as well. So keep in touch for sure, and let me know anything I can do to help.